In our last discussion, I taught you the model. I hope you tried running a model on something that happened last week, and so you were able to see how powerful one thought can be in your life. Today, we're going to talk about what follows your thought in the model, which is your feeling. We know that feelings are caused by our thoughts. There are many of us who don't like talking about feelings. And I think one of the primary reasons for that is because we think there are good and bad feelings. And a lot of us might feel that the majority of our feelings seem to be the so-called bad variety. In society, we put so much emphasis on feeling happy, successful, excited, energetic, and cheerful all the time. It's almost like we feel like those who are happy and optimistic the majority of the time are better people than those who are sad, insecure, or confused. But we know that no one is better than someone else. I like to believe we are all humans just doing the best we can. There are three things we do with those feelings we don't like that seem uncomfortable or that we feel guilty about. We resist them, avoid, or react to them. And I want to take a few minutes and talk about each one of these ways that we try to get rid of our feelings. Resisting looks like pushing them down or trying to ignore them. It's like those times when you feel like you're going to cry, but you don't want anybody to see that you're about to cry. So your throat gets really tight and you look away and you try to stop the tears so that no one can see the sadness on your face. We push down anger, disappointment, and so many other emotions that we feel. When we resist our emotions, sometimes they will surface in other ways, like things that maybe we see as physical ailments, maybe like a headache or a stomach ache, or even rashes or unexplained physical pain. Avoiding is like when we start to feel uncomfortable and want immediate relief. So we pick up our phones so we can stroll social media, or we go to the pantry and find some sugar. It's getting on Amazon and shopping or looking at pornography. It's often when we find ourselves overing, like oversleeping or overworking, over Netflixing, if that's even a word, to try to avoid those negative feelings. Avoiding is what can often cause addiction in our lives. The third thing we do is react. And this is when we might say or do things we regret. We might yell or throw something. Reacting can even look like crying a lot. We've all had times when we have felt like we have overreacted or seen someone else we thought overreacted to something that happened. The problem with resisting, avoiding, and reacting is that it may seem to help in the moment, but when we don't allow ourselves to fully feel our emotions, we can't heal our emotions. Our emotions need to be heard or they will actually grow. Have you ever known someone who always appeared to be in control and never show any emotion, and then out of the blue, they just erupted like a volcano? When we don't process our emotions, they will often do this. I like to think that emotions are like a beach ball. We can try to hold it indefinitely under the water. We can try to white knuckle, but that will only work for so long. Eventually, that beach ball or our emotions will come shooting out of the water. So what do we do with our emotions? The first step is to be aware that you're feeling a negative emotion, and then be aware of what you usually tend to do in order to cope with that negative emotion. Don't judge yourself, just watch and be curious. When you don't allow yourself to feel your emotions, there is often a negative consequence that follows. If we try to stuff or ignore our feelings, we may get ill. If we overshop, we go into debt. If we overeat, we become overweight. We can harm relationships when we overreact. What most of us don't understand is that when we don't allow ourselves to feel, we are missing out on a really big part of our life. If you think about it, really living is feeling all the emotions, positive and negative. When we don't allow ourselves to feel, it's like we're denying and rejecting a huge part of who we are. Lately, I've thought about some of the most precious times of my life, tender moments with my kids, and times when God felt really close. These are feeling times. Feelings are linked to our heart and soul. Vulnerability and being willing to admit and allow the negative as well as the positive brings connection in our lives. Have you ever thought of what it would be like if you could not feel any so-called negative emotions? We need these contrasting emotions. I don't think we would enjoy only feeling happy all the time as much as we think we would. I remember watching a show years ago about a boy who could not feel pain. When I first heard this, I thought, he's so lucky. But then it talked about how terrible it really was. He didn't know not to touch a hot stove. He didn't know when his leg was broken. Doctors never knew what to fix because he never had any symptoms. It was actually really hard and really sad. Contrast in life informs, teaches, and provides agency. When we allow negative emotion, we realize those feelings are not negative, overwhelming monsters we thought they were. They really aren't going to harm us. When we truly understand that we can handle any negative emotion, we realize we can handle anything life throws at us, because the worst thing that can happen to us is an emotion. There are 4 things I like to tell people to do in order to allow and process their negative emotions. I like to remember the 4 things by saying no, because that's how we often feel when some negative emotion creeps up, like embarrassment or disappointment or anger. So think double N, double O. The first N is for notice, and the other N is for name. So the first thing I do when I start feeling an emotion rise up inside of me is notice it. You know what I mean when you begin to feel angry, anxious, or sad. The second thing I do is name the emotion I'm feeling. By naming it, I mean separating it from what I am. Instead of saying, I'm angry, I would say, I feel angry, or what I'm feeling right now is anger. So those 2 N's are pretty easy, right? We notice and then we name. The 2 O's stand for open up and observe. At first, of course, I want to push my negative feeling away or avoid it. But now, as soon as I notice it and name it, I open up and I allow it. I breathe deeply and I let it sit with me. The second O is what at first seemed really strange, but is how I got the most traction, because it helped my brain realize the emotion is separate from me and will come and go. The last letter O is to observe and describe what it feels like in your body. Where do you feel the vibration in your body? I often feel it in my shoulders, my throat, or sometimes in my stomach. If you were to give it a shape and a color, what would they be? Does it feel hard or soft, hot or cold? What texture is it? As you observe it, it will begin to change. Watch and notice. Do you feel it moving? Don't try to make it leave. Let it take as long as it needs. Just like so many things, the first time I did this, it felt really uncomfortable. But after the first couple of times processing an emotion, it did seem like it was really helpful and not strange as strange as it was in the beginning. And I promise that it is worth trying. I remember the first time I was encouraged to allow my emotions. I was actually frightened. I really believed that if I allowed the sadness that I was feeling, I'd sink so far into a hole, I wouldn't be able to make it back out. I thought if I allowed my anger, I would do something I would regret. I thought if I allowed shame, it would overwhelm me and I'd never be the same person again. But actually, the opposite is true. I can't tell you how freeing it is when you realize that when you allow an emotion to just be with you, it usually won't take very long for that emotion to become softer and to not seem so heavy and difficult inside of us. Emotions love motion. So as soon as you want it, as soon as you allow it to come and stay as long as it wants and just hang out with you, then it seems to get bored and take off. It may come back if you start thinking the thoughts again that caused you to feel the negative emotion. But as you keep practicing just processing your emotion, it gets easier and easier. So what emotions are you afraid of? One of the emotions that I was most afraid of was anxiety. Anxiety and worry and fear are some of my most uncomfortable emotions. I remember one day feeling so anxious, I thought I might have an anxiety attack. That is when I decided to try processing an emotion because I didn't know what else to do. I took deep breaths and told my brain, this is anxiety. And then I started to describe it. It felt like 1,000 bugs were scurrying around in my stomach. They were all black and dark brown. They were all different shapes and sizes, and they felt really heavy inside of my stomach. As I allowed the anxiety to be there, it seemed to move up and become less intense. Soon I felt a little lighter, and I was starting to breathe easier. When we go through this exercise, we realize that we are not our feelings and that feelings come and go and they can't hurt us. I hope you will try this just once this week. I believe as you practice this, you will feel so much confident, realizing that you can handle anything life throws at you because now you know how to process any negative emotion. Know that you are loved, and thanks for listening. If you have a child who's struggling and would like to talk to someone, don't hesitate to reach out. To schedule a free coaching session, go to cindyallredcoaching.com.